Sony recommits to live service game and says that Bungie's Marathon won't suffer Concord's fate. Sony is very committed to building a diverse and resilient live service portfolio. Wow. Right? Wowie, wow. But it gets even worse. Check it out over here. We got an addition to this one. It says Sony remains committed to diverse and resilient live service games, including forthcoming Marathon and Fair Games. Now, you remember Fair Games is that one that was like, hey, you guys remember 2014 when everybody was Eat the Rich? Well, what if that became its own universe? And they just decided to do like Payday, but with rich college kids that wanted to steal from other rich college kids or something. It's really stupid. And so here we go. We also have Kotaku here. Now, I know Kotaku, but even they had to admit that there's trouble in paradise as far as Fair Games. They spelled it with a dollar sign because they're clever. But, as far as Fair Games is recorded as, we have it right here. They are delayed due to the studio head walking out, like the whole deal, like not even like I'm gonna leave this project. Now the studio head's just like, bye, altogether gone. That's right. However, it could be worse. You could be $20 at the bargain bin at Walmart. Could be that bad. You could be known as the officially the worst reviewed game of the year, that being 2025, the year of our Lord 2025. That's Mind's Eye, by the way. If you're not aware of what I'm talking about, here's a clip from J Burr TFD. That's Jburr underscore TFD over on X.com, and they have a clip from presumably their gameplay. I assume this is their gameplay. And as you can see, the main character rolls up in his off-road, on-road vehicle, pulls over to pick up a friend, and is rear-ended. He taps his friend, who then turns into spaghetti. And that's the end of the mission, because your friend has turned into spaghetti, and that's not a good deal. That's how you fail the mission, in fact, is when your friend turns into spaghetti. In the long-running contest for mankind's survival, a decision falls upon the individual to make a choice that will mark the rest of their lives. Become a subscriber or remain a lurker. Now, Sony has also decided that that whole battle about Helldivers being available around the world, whoopsies, and they decided just to drop that entirely. So apparently, this is my best guess, is they're greasing the wheels, if you will, for a free-to-play marathon. They're probably not going to go through with charging you to get into that game. They're just going to charge you to stay in it and have fun in it, or any type of experience inside of it, most likely. Think COD, but like on steroids, because they won't have like the price of admission anymore to make up the cost of development. Development, where they stole that art style, and art 1-to-1 entirely, 1-to-1 into the alpha. So we'll have to wait and find out if they decided just to keep that stolen stuff like they've done in the past, or if they're going to decide to rectify that, considering how around the world that got. However, here's the main news, and I scrolled down too far. Marathon isn't just going to be another Concord. That's my little Freudian slip. My bad. Isn't going to be another Concord. Now, Herman Hultz got onto a investor call, and he was explaining like, hey, what's up? This is our problem. We've figured it out with Concord, and this is how we're going to fix it for Marathon. Please don't worry. Please don't sell your stock. Please don't believe the people on YouTube that are accurately predicting this to be another Concord. No, really, that's pretty much what he says. Of course, I'm paraphrasing for fun, but here we go. We're gonna go through this. We're gonna thank Pirate Nation for going through this Polygon article, because you and I aren't going to. Anyway, and he went through and he found all these interesting tidbits within that article and isolated them for us. So please feel free to follow Pirate Nick. Excuse me, I almost gagged on what I just read there. Excuse me. Caught a vision of what Herman Hulst was making for an excuse there. It's awful. Anyway, we want to thank Pirate Nation. That's at Pirate without an E, Nation, over on X.com. That's right. So here we go. In a recent fire chat with investors, Herman Hulst admitted that Concord fell short of Sony's expectations, to say the least, but added that the publisher had learned some valuable lessons in the wake of the hero shooter's disastrous August 2024 launch and subsequent cancellation. Hulst said of Concord, quote, "But ultimately, that title entered into a hyper competitive segment of the market. I think it was sufficiently differentiated to be able to resonate with players. And so we have reviewed our process in light of this, to deeply understand how and why that title failed to meet expectations, to ensure we're not going to make the same mistakes again." Well, isn't that I doubt that. I strongly doubt that considering how Marathon has turned out thus far. I highly doubt that. And of course, fair games. But here we go. Quote, "We've introduced much more rigorous processes for validating, for revalidating our creative, our commercial, our development, assumptions, and hypotheses." Pause. So what I want to say is that, remember, they were telling everybody in that studio, in Firewalk Studio, that Concord was going to be the next Star Wars. That was going to be the Star Wars that took over for Star Wars. It would be the biggest thing ever. Everybody everywhere was going to want a little slice of Concord. That's why they went and made that Amazon thing, and then they tried making a bunch of anime. And last I checked, they were trying to find manga artists, mangaka, to put together Japanese manga about those goofballs that they made. It's awful. All right, so time in. It says, "Our commercial, our development assumptions and hypotheses, and we now do that on a much more ongoing basis." Quote, "The constant testing, the constant revalidation of assumptions that we just talked about, to me, is just so valuable to iterate and to constantly improve the title. So when launch comes, we are going to give the title the optimal chance of success." That's a lot of corporate talk for, we got caught stealing stuff again, being part of stealing stuff with Bungie, who just can't help themselves. So we're just going to make sure they're not doing that anymore. What I gather from their comments about Concord was there was nothing wrong with that game. It just didn't come out when people wanted it to come out. And that was the takeaway. $400 million, made it less than 2 weeks, had to flush the entire thing. Nothing salvaged from that, okay? Nada. Nada. Oops. The market was too competitive. They didn't even try to re-release it as some like mobile game or anything. Didn't try to salvage any of the characters from it, none of the animations, none of the maps, nothing. Trash. All of it. Trash. Just like that. And now they're going to tell you that that was just, well, we didn't anticipate the timing in the hyper competitive hero shooter market. You don't say. You don't say. How about that? How about, wow, wow. Crazy observation, Herman Holtz. It couldn't be that you also had like the zoo's, the circus's human zoo for characters in that game. Absolutely nothing to do with that. You remember Munchaluncha and Truckinator. Who doesn't want to be a Munchaluncha and Truckinator, just taking over the battlefield in the name of whatever the hell free runners are and against the people that don't want you to be able to do that? Whatever that is. See, Concord decided that it was very cool and very fun inside of its head. Everybody in that studio admitted that they had toxic positivity. No one was allowed to critique one another, and thus, all of this house of cards built on a castle of sand just came falling down predictably when it met the snowplow of reality. Okay? This happens a lot with creatives. I know. I make things. I make comics. I make music. Well, I made one comic. I make music. I like to just write, create things. I make memes all the time. A lot of the stuff you see floating around this channel is just stuff that popped into my head that I thought you might like. I don't know. I just like making stuff. But one of the things you have to do when you're a creator is accept that you're not creating for the world. Don't do that. Charles Bukowski talked about this in his poems. I look up to Bukowski's writings, not the man. The man was very flawed, but his writings are very inspirational. If you're looking for something to sort of channel your angst around, your frustration with life around, Bukowski really puts it in very solid perspective to understand that you're just a dude. All of that effort, all of that grandeur is just here. That's it. That's it. That is another video game in the menagerie pile of video games out there. It is in the menagerie of BS out there that people are sifting through to entertain themselves with after work that crushes their soul. Okay? This is now Bukowski didn't talk about video games. Let me be clear about that. But that's just me kind of like paraphrasing what he had to say about this whole thing is that what you're going to go through on an individual basis does not reflect the world outside. He had a piece of writing is that all the suffering in the world that had ever happened up until this point and could ever happen pales in comparison to the suffering of one person alone in the night. And that, you know, it's paraphrasing. I'm getting the quote wrong, but it to the effect of like your individual experience is vastly different than the collective experience of humanity. Okay. And creatives like this, they want to go out and create the Muncha Luncha, Truckinator, Meth Elf, Vampire Dentist. You can go watch the Concord video that I made about that. There's a whole music video. I'll attach the music video at the end of this video so you can listen to some cool jams when you're done with this one. But the real reality is about all that is they created all those characters to satisfy themselves. Okay? They satisfied themselves on a political agenda level, which meant that they were creating for the world. And so if yourself is the world, you've made a mistake as a creator immediately. Fundamentally. Those characters they created had no basis in their real lives. Not a one of those characters, not even Muncha Luncha, believe it or not. Not a one of those characters had any reflection on their real lives. And I'm not telling you that people involved with Halo were experienced space marines plunging into battle against guys with split faces and stuff. I'm not telling you that. What I'm telling you is that these people had experiences in strife and overcoming challenges and the pain of having your best efforts completely dashed away in seconds, right? Now, the Concord people went through that eventually, but the reality is they went into this game patting each other on the back and on the ass all the time, like, "Ooh, we're all great. We're gonna make the next Star Wars." Boom! It blew up, and Herman Hulst walks away with, "Well, our biggest mistake was that we entered a hyper-competitive market." Okay, cool. Schedule 1 showed up with the drug simulator, arguably a no market game, no market genre, really. Had like one competitor out there, I think. And they were mad about it, by the way. But again, uh, outsold Assassin's Creed Shadows, a multi-million dollar production. And Schedule 1 was done by one guy who didn't even know how to list stuff in other countries. Okay? So just kind of put that into perspective for a second about what Herman Hulst has taken away from this and how that reflects on Fair Games and Marathon. Okay? Concord was probably the like peak woke entertainment, okay? Peak woke for like the 2010s. That was all the 2010s ideologies about radical acceptance, intersectionality. Everybody's the same everywhere all the time, and we're only a little bit different for our Guardians of the Galaxy one-liner jokes we're meant to make. Then we all go back to being just a homogenous pile of corporatized blah, right? That's because that's what the human experience is. So this is where the big problem is like you and I will sit down and we will enjoy something like Halo. We will sit down and we will enjoy something like Gears of War. We will sit down and we will enjoy The Legend of Zelda. We will sit down and we will enjoy a story like Meat Boy. We'll play Meat Boy for hours on end. You'll sit down and you'll play Doom. Well, maybe not Doom the Dark Ages, but you'll play most of the other Dooms. You'll enjoy that. What it is it's rewarding your experience, your sense of strife, your sense of challenge. Okay? And when it comes to a sense of strife and a sense of challenge, humans tend to accept that stuff pretty uniformly. When we meet a challenge, we have one of two choices: accept that challenge or resist that challenge. And the problem is when you start interjecting agenda into that challenge, not your life experience. That's why those games I listed, Halo, Doom, Meat Boy, why those games reward your sense of struggle. And why, when you came into this strange wonderland of radical acceptance, intersectional feminism, and all this other crap that means nothing at all to the future that this world was presenting, okay? You're dealing with aliens, for God's sakes. There's a lizard man on your deck. What the hell is a human being? Come on. Anyway, what are human politics when you're dealing with a walking septic tank? Come on. Anyway, back to what's going on with Marathon. Now you take that psychology, okay? You take that psychology and you roll that into Bungie now, who is infamous for just, well, slap it together, delete it, slap it together, delete it. They complete assembly line, nobody's looking over anybody's shoulder attitude, right? The people that brought us Halo and then abandoned it. You know, those guys, right? Now, Fair Games is a hyper politicized video game that does nothing but perpetuate the idea that the underclass should rise up and destroy the upper class because that's going to solve anything. Because look at all the things it solved around the world doing that. Let's make a video game rewarding that real world political ideology that was really only hot for about 2 or 3 months in 2014. 11 years later, the game still can't find its roots, but Herman Hulst wants to tell you that the disaster of Concord that was entirely brought on by a political agenda, well, no, that just had to do with the fact that there was a lot of hero shooters out there, and the Marvel and the Rivals and the Overwatches and the Apexes and that other thing there with the Valorant stuff, and who knows, people doing stuff and the things. That's his best excuse, is like there was stuff happening and we didn't expect other people to want to play other games other than Concord. That was his best excuse. This is the man in charge of Sony, basically everything outside of Japan. Herman Hulst is that guy. And his best explanation about Concord, after we've all had plenty of time to study the crash wreckage of that, to do an autopsy of every possible pixel and polygon in the game, Herman Hulst wants to come out and be like, psst, guys, traffic was just really heavy that day. It wasn't us. It was the market. It wasn't our decisions. It was the market. So there you go. Expect Marathon to be chock full of stuff that it's got no business perpetuating, and expect Fair Games to be exactly what it advertises. 2014's alt-leftist politics slammed in your face over and over and over again with bright neon colors to remind you that you're on the wrong side of history 11 years ago. But anyway, guys, you're going to have to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, excuse me, I did not mean to whack my mic spring like that and make some weird thunderous noise in your ear. This is not an ASMR channel, I promise. Anyway, good luck out there.